Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
I'm doing great today. Thanks for asking. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Today on The Voice of Yoga, we'll talk about the revolutionary practices and concepts that are being implemented at the Institute for Personal Development, the Kriya Yoga Ashram. This ashram is a place for learning and training in the ancient spiritual science of Kriya Yoga. In this model, we will demonstrate how yoga and religion have the same goals and objectives. So listen as Swami explains the one-size-fits-all benefits of joining an individual with the divine. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness, and join our Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and experience the power of prana. So, Swami, we're saying in the summary that we'll demonstrate how yoga and religion have the same goals and objectives. And I know that you've said before that yoga means union, and religion means to relink. Sounds to me like they actually do mean the same thing. So what would be the goals of both?
Yeah, it's the union of the individual with the divine. And I think that's the part that's actually gone astray. It's the part that's missing. And, without the connection, nothing really happens. And that's one of the things that I think is really valuable about the program that we have here, that it was founded on some discoveries that I made many years ago. And one of the discoveries was that the human being has the ability to survive and not grow, which means that we can chronologically age and psychologically, spiritually remain in this underdeveloped state. And that's pretty much what's happening today. We're surviving, but we're not growing. And the other discovery that Institute for Personal Development was founded on was that there is an innate drive in all of us that we want to be whole and we want to be complete. But in order to actualize this experience of wholeness, the individual had to learn how to transform. Now, that's a pretty common word today that people throw around. But transform really means go through, form the physical. That there is a separation. And that's where this reunion or this union comes in, because it's a departure from being a human being that seeks out things that are visible and tangible, or things that are invisible but tangible, and becomes a human being that seeks out what is invisible and intangible. And one of the things I found that was really helpful were the discoveries that were made in quantum physics. That quantum physics pretty much laid out mysticism for us, that underlying matter was energy, and underlying energy is the void or the nothing. And that was the Trinity that a lot of our religions were founded on. And in fact, yoga has its own ways of presenting this Trinity. But reality is multidimensional. And two of the dimensions of reality are dualistic, which means that nothing is whole, everything is in half. And this one aspect of reality, this absolute, is the unified state. And so the whole intention of yoga and religion was to educate an individual in how to separate from our attachment or our desire for things that were dualistic in half, and now literally rebirth your body in this indivisible unified field. And when this happens, matter and mind now come together with new information. And again, a big thing that we're teaching here is this thing called apotheosis, which again is another word that can mean anything to anybody. But this apotheosis is the process of the individual becoming divine. And it does have an evidence procedure, that this process unfolds in 3 phases. One of the reasons why a lot of scriptures and even metaphors that are out there, like the hero's journey, is the separation, the journey, the return, that this whole process of becoming a whole person is something that, like I had said, is missing. We're chronologically aging, but we're psychologically, spiritually remaining in this underdeveloped state. And, of course, we have therapy where people go and they try and siphon off what's going on in their inner environment, and at best it may offer you some relief. But, again, you're only surviving. You're not growing. And in order to grow, you really need a complete game plan. And that was what the ancients understood, that we could chronologically age and psychologically, spiritually remain in this underdeveloped state. And in order for us to grow, some tampering had to happen. There had to be a departure from instinct, appetite, preservation, and survival. And that they had points of passage, they had rites of passage, rituals, ceremonies, ordeals, ascetic practices. These were all necessary in order to educate a human being in how to transform. Now, of course, again, transform today can be any kind of change. If you go from secretary to lawyer, your life has transformed in this new model. But transformation is a very specific dynamic that you actually separate from your attachment to things that are visible and tangible or invisible and tangible, duality, and you attach to this indivisible unified field. And that's what I think is very unique about the programs that we offer here, because we recognize that it's not an intellectual accomplishment. It's not something that you declare. It's not a secret handshake. It's not a technique. That it is actually a way of becoming something different. And this process of going from a human in the larvae state to a human in the adult state does have an evidence procedure. But it begins with the joining of the individual with the divine. And when you look across the board, what it would entail in order for you to desire nothing, and you see what people call being spiritual, it doesn't measure up. And that's what I think, again, coming back to Institute for Personal Development, we really focus on the physics of spirituality. That it's basic, like attracts like, and two things can't occupy the same space at the same time. That it's not magic, but it is physics. That the individual does have to literally, like I had said earlier, rebirth your body in a different source of sustenance. You have to desire this void or this nothing. You have to, as in most religions today, they said, love God. And again, these are terms that we don't understand what they mean. We think God is a person, which now puts it in the realms of duality. If it is a manifested image, then it's in half. And in order to understand that God is the unified state, And then to be able to love God with your heart, your soul, and your mind, again, not just declare that I love God, but to feel connected to something that is pure, powerful, and sacred that you've internalized in your physical body, in what is referred to as the heart, which is the body's feeling state.
So there's a lot of people who have their own practices out there, whether it's a different kind of a yoga program that they may be engaged in, or whether it's a meditation practice or some type of religious practice. So how would somebody be able to examine their practice and know if it is something that is actually working? How would they know when they become psychologically and spiritually developed? I mean, there's probably thousands of people out there in the world that think that they are, and when they're really not. So how do we examine that?
Yeah, it's going to come down to, what do I desire? That like attracts like. If you draw from things that are visible and tangible, so if your body desires and is longing for food, mother, approval, and your concept of loving God is intellectual, then chances are that you're in this regressive cycle. And the other thing is that there is this innate drive in all of us that we want to be whole and we want to be complete. And if we are not drawing from this unified field, then there's going to be retribution. The jealous God you read about in the Bible, there's a kickback from this unlived latent potential that you want to be a whole person, and it manifests itself as symptoms of guilt, shame, anger, resentment, blame, emptiness, and boredom. These are the things that you could actually start to look for. And if your inner environment is inundated with these feelings, again, good indicator that my spiritual practice is missing the mark, that I'm pretending to be spiritual. I haven't actualized true spiritual reality. And again, when you love the Lord thy God with your heart, your soul, and your mind, you feel connected to something that's pure, powerful, and sacred. So that you're kind of in bedrock. That it doesn't mean that everything in your life is going to go great all the time, but it does mean that your sense of self will be totally established in this relationship.
So in our practices that we do every day, like you might be talking to somebody and they talk about, well, I pray every day. And I know at Institute for Personal Development we have a different way of thinking about praying. I'll let you explain that. But just because somebody prays every day doesn't necessarily mean that they have this connection, right? I mean, they might intellectually feel that they're connected because they pray every day. But when would they know when they have this connection?
Yeah, praying and what we call praying, because they use the term pray, which is kind of like talking to this person that we call God and asking for whatever it is that we think we want to be happy or healthy or whatever. But at Institute for Personal Development, we really use the term prey, that when you pray on God, that when you use this indivisible unified field as a source of sustenance, then, like I said, you feel connected to something that's pure, powerful, and sacred. And it is producing a feeling in your body of bliss, wonder, awe, because this source of sustenance doesn't fail, doesn't let you down. And it starts to initiate this progressive cycle.
All right, I want to get back to that, but we're going to pause right now and hear a word from our sponsor. So, listeners, we'll return in a moment.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate.
If you are looking for a Samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Starting with the separation from mother, including the labors and tasks of the hero and the return as a whole person. Practice makes perfect only when practice is whole. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. Samadhi, or total consciousness, is experienced by knowing and doing with devotion. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste.
Well, welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, let's get back to praying, the P-R-E-Y, on God, and why is it different from if I was to go to a Mass, for example? How is P-R-A-Y different than what we do at IPD?
Well, like I said, for the most part, it's really about this connection. Religion means to relink. Yoga means union. See, when you don't understand what this connection is and the benefits that come with it, then you're still drawing from a source of sustenance that's limiting. But you're still trying to perform, say, for example, the behavior or the conduct that would be associated with the experience that one gets when one joins with this indivisible unified field. And that's one of the things that we say, that we need laws to uphold the conduct that you do naturally when you are a human in this adult state. And humans in the adult state are virtuous by nature. They're not trying to be good. It's just, this is what you become. And so it's all about the connection as opposed to the conduct, which is the way that we try and do that. Try and do it from the conduct. We think the conduct will give us the connection. But the connection really comes with this rebirthing of the body, that you now desire the void or the nothing. You desire this indivisible unified field. That transformation, that makes you something different. And that metamorphosis does have an evidence procedure. Like I said, when we go from unconscious awareness to self-conscious awareness to superconscious awareness, it parallels the metamorphosis of a butterfly. Butterflies are insects in the larvae state. They do nothing but indulge. So the characteristics of the human in the larvae state, we're careless, we're emotional, we're indulgent, we're excitable. Then, of course, the human moves into the chrysalis phase. Every religion on this planet was a lifestyle that actually shut off the instincts and the appetites of the body. And it wasn't just to abstain in hopes of some reward. It was actually to prepare the body for the invocation of this other source of sustenance. And the characteristics of the human in the chrysalis state, you're careful, you're intelligent, you're ambitious, but you're abstinent. You're abstaining from the things you're craving in the larvae state. It's horrible. And that's not what being spiritual is all about. Being spiritual isn't about abstaining, it's about indulging. And that's the whole thing, is that when you now internalize this other source of sustenance, because from that chrysalis, the caterpillar now emerges as a butterfly. butterflies are very different than caterpillars, and butterflies have options that caterpillars don't. And the same is true with the human in this adult state. The human in the adult state has options that humans in the larvae state don't have. The characteristics of the human in the adult state: you're carefree, you're wise, you're liberated, you're enthusiastic. You're in tandem with something. It's pure, it's powerful, it's sacred, and it's not going anywhere. And again, that's very different because it is this connection that makes all of these benefits possible. And when you look across the board, nobody's really telling you you have to purify yourself. Nobody's telling you that you have to internalize this invisible, intangible source of sustenance. They're saying, that you can do this intellectually and academically, when in fact you will be identifying a lesser experience with a true mystical state of being.
I remember years ago I had seen this movie, and the character in the movie, he ends up befalling some personal troubles with his family and so on and so forth, and he says to somebody in the movie, he goes, "I don't understand what went wrong. I did everything right. I'm a God-fearing man. I went to church. I did this. I did that. I did everything I was supposed to do. I don't understand why all these things are happening to me." And so I guess my question to you is, I think a lot of people probably feel that they are doing the right things, and yet they still befall on hard times. So how is it, so where is the breakdown? What's happened?
Yeah, that part, like all you have to do is read the book of Job in the Bible, and you wonder, how is that a good barometer? What's going on in the outside world at all? And it's so hard to measure. And again, one of the things that we use is being happy. And there's a difference between worldly happiness, there's a difference between intellectual happiness, and a difference between this eternal happiness of being joined with this indivisible, unified field. Now, they all make you happy, but one of them is enduring and lasting, and maybe there are varying degrees of being happy, but you really have to be careful, and that's what I think is really valuable about the practices that we teach, that you really are trying to get the change deep enough. Like even in our asana program, we do salutation to the moon and salutation to the sun. And the primary reason for that is that the moon, when you're doing these particular movements, you're attuning yourself to this invisible, intangible source of sustenance. It's kind of like when a bee comes back from a hive, it does this kind of dance. And what it's doing is it's telling all the other bees where it went to get the pollen. And so salutation to the moon are these movements that are telling the human mind-body complex where to go to find this tree of life, this invisible, intangible source of sustenance. And then salutation to the sun now becomes movements that enable us to demonstrate the qualities that your connection to this source of sustenance enables you to become. So you embody virtue. And when you're working with a practice that is working with you physically, mentally, and conceptually, that you're actually changing the source of sustenance that you are using to validate yourself, then of course the change goes deep enough.
So we have to understand that we're not just a physical body, and that we have systems in our physical body, like we talk about with salutation to the moon, that we have to be aware of, but we also have energetic systems in our body too, like the chakra system. And so I think it's important to understand that all facets of our body have to be taken care of. So we actually have some practices that we do at Institute of Personal Development that try to develop the chakra system. Did you want to talk to our listeners about that?
Well, yeah, we use the Cretan Labyrinth, which, why reinvent the wheel? To me, it was just like this perfect tool to help you to balance your energy centers and at the same time expand the conscious mind. That it's basically an exercise in concentration, which is what we were talking about last week. But energy follows mind. And it's all structured around the two-part Greek philosophy, know thyself, nothing in excess. And part A, we use the chakra system for knowing ourselves. But you have to know yourself in the way that you're created, not just know yourself in the way you do when you're left to your own devices. So it gives you an organized way of looking at all of the different departments of your life, because that becomes the origins of disease. And then, of course, if you understand how to do this internal mental work, it gives you a better chance to be able to help shape your reality, that the formula that we work with is how we think is what we become. Energy follows mind. And so being able to work with imagery, and then again, a lot of what we talk about is the language of spirit, that it doesn't understand English or French, that it understands images. And so when you are putting your affirmations in a format that you're able to ask for what you want in the language that the universe understands, then again you increase your chances. And of course, thought being an energy capable of producing effects, but always measurable based on the amount of strength we emit it with. When you rebirth your body in the life force and you feel connected to something pure, powerful, and sacred, you're more able to emit a thought with the power of intention. Because with this connection comes calmness, comes clarity, comes confidence.
Well, I think it is almost about that time. I have to start kind of closing some things down here. So listeners, I want to invite you out there to visit our website. You can follow Swami on Pinterest and Twitter and, of course, on Facebook. And our website is www.ipdtransform.com. So once there, you can post comments about this show or any ideas for future shows you may want us to consider. But keep those comments, questions, and curiosities coming, because Swami does enjoy hearing from you. And be sure to tune in next week. Next week, Monday, October 10th, is International Mental Health Day, and that's the day where awareness to that. And we're going to talk about that Kriya Yoga style. So email me with any questions that you might have regarding that or any other shows or anything you'd like Swami to answer. My address is lisa@ipdtransform.com. So, Swami, do you have any final thoughts or comments about today's show?
Well, I would like to encourage people to come in and start taking classes with us and start to experience some of the because it is very different when you become powered by prana, or that you prey on prana, and you start to realize that prana brings benefits, that it will give you wisdom to overcome ignorance. It will give you virtue to overcome fear. It will give you purpose to overcome selfishness, and it will give you enthusiasm to overcome laziness, which are the major obstructions that keep individuals stuck in this regressive pattern. But it's all about the connection and not so much about the conduct. And I think when you how relatively easy it is once you start to use this life force as a source of sustenance, then your adherence to the program is usually much more consistent. And with that, I wish everybody a good day. Namaste.
And thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton along with Swami Jayananda signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.